Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of The Catholic Syndrome, brought to you by the Diocese of Monterey. Today, I am joined by a very special person, John Rinaldo. He was my professor, is that the right term, at Santa Clara?
Sure, why not? Why not?
Yeah, or something. There's a lot of different terms. A teacher there, and a fellow youth minister, or was, and he's done 1,000 things for the church and with so many people and parishes. And so I will just let him at this point now introduce himself and all the different amazing things he's done.
I appreciate that, Scott. Thanks so much for inviting me to be part of this. It's always fun to join fellow podcasters. I've done a lot of podcasts in the past, and it's a great medium to connect with people. So yeah, my name is John Rinaldo. I currently am a professor at Santa Clara University, and teach courses on evangelization, discipleship, youth and young adult ministry. Coming up, I'm teaching a class on preparing for the sacraments of initiation. So I'm super excited about that. But I've had a myriad of roles. I've been a parish youth and young adult ministry coordinator. I've been in a couple of different dioceses, both in San Jose and the Archdiocese of Los Angeles, doing a lot of leadership training and development for those dioceses in the field of youth and young adult ministry. I've served in Catholic charities and did a lot of justice at work, which was really an enjoyable time. I was more recently, I was a national coach and trainer for Parish Success Group, where I got a chance to work with parishes and dioceses across the country and really help them be intentional about planning for ministry and how do we move forward. But I think a lot of people in parishes have really good intentions, but I think we sometimes get stuck. And so it's kind of fun to come in and be able to provide some of that guidance. And I often don't tell people things they don't already know. I just usually push them off the edge, And so
Isn't that the worst when you know how to do something, but you just don't do it?
Well, we've all been there, right, Scott?
Yeah.
I've totally been there. So I'm in the same boat. So I'm no better than anybody else.
Oh yeah, no, I'm talking about myself too. That's like every day I wake up, well, I have to do this and that and the other thing, but video games.
Yeah, or Netflix or Disney Plus or whatever.
Oh my gosh, Disney Plus. One night, my wife, she was busy working. She's a teacher and she was just grading test after test. And I was like, well, how long do you think you'll be before we can like watch our next show? We're really into Bridgerton right now. And she was like, oh, I might be like an hour, maybe even an hour and a half. And I was like, and so I went on Disney Plus and Tangled popped up, and it's my favorite Disney princess movie. And I was like, do I have enough time to watch Tangled?
You
she
probably
was like, just
did.
put it on.
That's so good. So good.
Yeah. All right. So you've clearly done a lot, and you've worked a lot with parishes, like you say, to help them be the best version of themselves, basically do things they already know they should be doing. But I want to talk about kind of how you got to that position you're in now, being a professor and being in that position with helping parishes. So tell us about yourself, like where you come from, what you did to get here.
Yeah, so I was one of these kids. So I grew up in Northern California, grew up in the Diocese of Santa Rosa and Petaluma. And I was one of these kids who just was kind of going through the motions of faith formation, of sacramental prep, like so many other people. And then, confirmation, not the preparation, but the ritual, the liturgy itself was really a profound moment for me. And from that moment on, I recognize that that's kind of been the shift in my life, where I really recognize that this is important. What we do as church, who I am as a Catholic is important. And I just kind of went on this trajectory that I went to a Catholic university, was so blessed to go to Loyola Marymount University, and was heavily involved, and had a mentor who asked me my senior year of college, well, what do you want to do when you graduate? Because you graduate like 3 months.
The $1 million question.
Oh my gosh, totally. And I'm like, I have no idea. And he's like, have you ever thought about becoming a youth minister? And I'm like, you could do that? And
and so funny. Sure enough, my youth minister, when he was asked that, because he used to be a music minister at the parish, and he told all of us leaders when we were older that when he was first asked by the pastor, do you want to be a youth minister? He said, no, I've seen their paychecks.
Yeah, the paycheck's not high, but I tell you, those were some fun days, especially my first parish ministry job. I had a blast. It was so fun.
Oh my gosh, yeah, it's a good gig, all things considered, to be completely honest.
Absolutely. But I think to get to your question, there was a turning point right when I was about 22, 23 in that first parish ministry job, where I started reading leadership books, and in particular secular leadership books, right?
Mm.
So I was reading Catholic books and learning from Catholic resources, but I started reading, the John Maxwell's of the world and Ken Blanchard's of the world and Patrick Lencioni's of the world, right? And it started to get into this genre of reading that I had never encountered before in my life, and it was the genre of leadership development.
Mm.
And I was so passionate and so moved by what I read that I discovered very early in my career, and I'm so thankful that that's what I want to do. That ultimately I want to train leaders, whether it's my volunteers in parish ministry or whether it's in the diocesan role I was in, where I got a chance to train other parish volunteers, but also youth ministers and staff members and DREs and things like that. And that's been part of my trajectory. And even as a professor now at Santa Clara University, Scott, you've taken my class.
Yeah.
I try to be really practical, right? And I want this to be actionable because I want to change our behavior as leaders in the church. And it was that turning point that really kind of created a shift in my ministry. It was no longer just about, I wanted to hang out with kids, which I enjoyed immensely, right?
Yeah.
But I wanted to multiply my impact by training more leaders. And that's the short story of how kind of I moved in this trajectory of wanting to do leadership and training and teaching. And I think that's where God wants me to be. And I think that's where I thrive. And I'm really, really enjoying it. And I can't believe I've been doing all this for about 20 years. It's crazy.
Wow. Yeah. I can speak for you about the leadership training thing. I mean, that's basically what the course was. It was leadership in youth ministry, or whatever the exact title was. That was the meat of the class. And just reading books that you assigned, and you'd be like, okay, so this guy isn't even a Christian, but how can we apply this to the church? Because everybody needs leadership. Like, how are you reaching out to people and getting to be part of your team? How are you doing this to make yourself a better leader as well? And you really did a good job to bring all that back home, because that's what the church needs is leaders, and you can pull from as many different subjects or teachers on the subject as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate that. And folks, just so you know, I didn't pay Scott to say nice things about me and my class, so I appreciate the affirmation.
No, he just bought me dinner though. So yeah, no, John really is a great professor. So if you're thinking about, any young adult listening to this, getting your master's at a great Catholic school, go to Santa Clara and take one of Professor John Rinaldo's classes.
You have to tell Joe Morris, our director. He'll be very happy you said
that. We'll send him the link to this episode.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So that's kind of how you got here now. And I love hearing those origin stories, because everybody's is different. Like, I knew in high school that I kind of liked this job, because I was like, well, I kind of want to be a priest, but I kind of want to like get married and have sex one day, was like my thought process at 16. And so I looked at my youth minister. I was like, there's a good middle ground. And so, but then you're asked like 3 months before you're graduating college at 22, 23-ish years old. And you had never thought of the idea before that. Granted, we went to school, maybe 8-10 years apart, so it was, the job market for youth ministry was different, but just the idea that you never thought of that at that point in your life. Even when I'm having the idea in high school, like, oh, I could do what he's doing,
Well, I think that's the thrust of vocations, right? Just vocations in general, right? Do children and young people see this as a potential path? And you did. And in high school, I didn't see it until I was in late college, but someone showed it to me, right? And I think that's one of our responsibilities in youth ministry and young adult ministry, is to not only serve them, but to show that this is a potential vocational career path that you could take if you're so crazy enough to do it.
Yeah, if you're willing to take the paycheck.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. So let's get into that, a bit of our shared vocation in a way. So we're here in this world of COVID, and youth ministry has sort of continued. I know for my parish, the youth ministry aspect of confirmation classes has kind of taken a back seat. There's no more youth groups, but I've always run my classes kind of in that vein anyway. So I still insert in our hour and a half classes. But kind of what's going on now that you see, because your kids aren't old enough to be in, youth groups yet, correct?
No, I have a 4-year-old, a 5-year-old, and 10-year-old, so not
Okay.
quite there yet.
All right, but the 10-year-old's getting close to like middle school group. So
Yep.
we'll see. But from what you've seen in other parishes and all the work you've done, what during then and especially now do you think has had to change during the COVID time in youth ministry?
I think this is an excellent question. The I've seen a couple different responses, and the first response is what I call the wait and see response. There have been a lot of parishes out there who have done very little, if anything at all, to be innovative during this time. And part of that is maybe they're following the lead of their pastor, who's kind of wait and see. I mean, I've heard horror stories where one youth minister in an unnamed diocese, unnamed region of the country, told me like he has not met with his pastor or their staff since COVID began. And I'm
They
like,
haven't had like a staff meeting or anything.
nothing. They've had nothing. It's like the pastor took a very long vacation, and so the staff has done the same thing, and they have done nothing. And that, honestly, I was so shocked to hear that, because if there was any time that's more critical to show that the church is relevant, it's during COVID, right?
Yeah.
And we're hopefully, I'm hopeful, coming to the end of this and slowly waning, but it's still a big issue depending on where you're at. But I haven't seen that effort. So that's the wait and see crowd. Like the wait and see crowd are the folks that are just waiting so that things can get back to normal, so we can be doing what we did before.
So we can just get back to doing what we were doing the way it's meant to be done.
Yeah, and first of all, my humble opinion is that really didn't work before COVID. So why do you think it's going to work after COVID? Right? We have plenty of data, Scott. Right? We have plenty of data to show us that a lot of our formation efforts just aren't hitting the spot, and they want to go back to that. And I understand that, right? Based on what you and I were talking about earlier, right? We get up in the morning, we're like, I should do this, but nah.
Yeah.
It's about we're comfortable, right? We know what we know, and if I don't have to, if I don't hurt enough, then I'm not going to change. And I think there's a large population in the church that is in that mode, and quite honestly, they're still in that mode. So they've done maybe a little bit, maybe they've tried to do some Zoom meetings, maybe they've tried to send home some materials, but they're still kind of waiting and seeing. And now it's been like 10 months, and I can't imagine what type of engagement they're going to have when everything does open fully. So I think there's that crowd, Scott. I don't know if you've seen that crowd, but I've certainly seen that crowd in different parts of the country.
Yeah, not to call anybody out in particular, but definitely I've seen what you're talking about. We're like, oh, we keep doing it the same, no reason to change. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. And all of a sudden, you realize that you've been doing the same thing for 20 years. And I've seen that with other leaders that I know, where I've even brought up Steubenville conferences, and they were like, "What's that?" And I'm like, I went to my first one 12 years ago. I don't know where you've been. And when I went for the first time, that was far from the first one, And so you can get stuck in just this, how we do it. We do this event and then we do that event and we fundraise this way. And, oh, look at the clock. It's now 2040 and I have done it. And I've been at this parish since 2020.
Yeah. It's same old, same old. I totally agree with you there. And so one of the reasons why I encourage people to read or listen to podcasts or go to conferences or whatever it may be is because it gets the imagination going, right?
Yeah.
In terms of what you can do. And so there is a subsection of the population that has done that, right? And to be honest, I've seen it more in the youth ministry world than maybe in some other parts of church world. That's because typically we know this, and I know I'm biased because I'm a youth minister at heart, but we tend to be more crazy, right? We tend to be more innovative. We tend to be more creative. And so we often create the lead. We are the lead, in terms of the change that we create in our parishes. And I've seen that time and time again, for 20 plus years.
That I would agree with that to an extent for sure. Was really cool. My parish, we went to the Life Teen Convention, CYMC. They had it online this year. And so it was really nice that you had to just pay one flat fee, and they're like, as many people from the parish can attend online. And so me, my DRE, and pastor went, and it was great to finally not be just the one person going to an event like this for faith formation and then coming back and trying to reiterate it all. to the other people in charge. Instead, we were all in one room. We didn't have to travel, and we all got the same information. We walked away from that going, okay, we got great ideas. What should we do? And we had a list of like 7 things we could try. Granted, we've only done like 2 of them so far, but we were all together like these are all great things we can do. And, you know, of course, life gets in the way. Then all of a sudden it was like Advent before we knew it and everything. But it's just, yeah, being there and seeing the differences, because when you're just the pastor, you don't see how quick things change, especially with children, because, well, you're going to meetings, you're doing finances for the church. You know, you're thinking about Advent and Christmas and Lent and Easter when it's July, and you don't get to keep up with all the latest and greatest church techniques. And so it was really good getting to do that. So you're right. Sometimes our events, our ideas are that push.
And I don't want to lose what you just said, that you didn't do it alone. You did it together, right? You want to create change in your parish and how you do ministry. Go to training together as a staff and go to the same workshops and experience the same thing. Because if one person hears something, then you come back and you start sharing it. It's like, oh, it's just a squeaky wheel, whatever. Like, you know, but if you all hear it, then all of a sudden you're all on the same page. Yes. And that is a fundamental to creating change, is that you all come back with the same urgency because you all heard the same thing. That is a powerful technique, whether it's a youth ministry training or adult formation training or whatever it may be. Going together is huge. Even
in a sector that's not even the church, whatever your job is, and there is some training for your career, don't just be the only one to go. Because I had that at my first parish, which will remain unnamed, because I went to a CYMC in Scottsdale, Arizona, and I was like, oh, wow, like I'm all jazzed up. I just had like my own retreat. You know, sometimes you need that. Shotgun of Jesus to your face again to get you amped up about your faith. And I went back, and the pseudo DRE was like, hey, how was your conference? Like, it was great. You know, we did this and we did that. And like, she cuts me off and was like, okay, cool. So when are you going to start up summer youth groups? And I was like, well, after I finished telling you about all these great ideas I have, but I guess I'll just get to it on my own, you know. Like, she wasn't there. She didn't get to experience that.
Right. And it's not the same, right? And so the second group is really those who really went on a limb and tried to be innovative, Scott. And I think, look, none of us knew how to do this March 2020. So let me just, even me, like, I was coaching and consulting parishes at the time when COVID hit, and they're like, what do we do now? And I feel like, John, you're supposed to have all the answers. I'm like, oh crap, I have no idea, because nobody has ever experienced this. Is like a brand new reality for all pastoral ministers. There's none of us that went to school to learn how we do church in a pandemic. No, right? You know, that class doesn't, maybe it exists now. It didn't exist, 10 months ago.
They're going to keep training people for the next 80 to 100 years for when the next one hits.
Well, yeah, maybe it might be sooner. We'll see. Yeah.
I'm holding on to the 80 to 100 years. I'm done with, gone. As a millennial, I'm done with once in a lifetime events. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. You guys have had a few of those, in your lifetime already. So should we rattle them off? 9/11, the Great Recession. Okay. Yeah, we're done. So.
Yeah. Now we're into another recession.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead.
So I was going to get on to the next question unless you had something else to say.
Go right ahead.
All right. So we talk about change a lot, and like, I'm guilty of this even outside this podcast we're recording now. But what in youth ministry, or even in the parish life, what needs to stay the same? Because we talk about change. Oh, this is a new normal, new, different, always gets brought up. But our church is founded on sacred tradition with a capital T, stuff that we have done the same way for forever, that we take back to the apostles. And clearly that has worked too. So what about the way we do these things ought to stay the same?
I'm going to be a little radical here on you.
Uh-oh. That doesn't sound like staying the same.
Well, no, here's the thing. It's actually, I can't believe I'm saying this. Oh my gosh. We have actually drifted from some of our apostolic traditions.
Ooh, okay.
Over the course of well, not more than 100 years, but I'm a church nerd. I'm reading like the 600-page book right now on the origins of the sacraments of initiation and how we got to where we are now, right?
Oh, I've had a crash course on that, but I love to read the book on it.
Yeah, no, I'm reading a whole book, and it's so good, But what I'm learning, right, is what you're starting to see in documents today, for instance, is that all formation and all sacramental prep, and especially with the model of infant baptism, first Eucharist at age of reason and adolescent confirmation, right? The argument has been all of that formation should be rooted in the RCIA model, what we now call the RCIA model, which we
Yes.
didn't call it years ago, right?
That was just the catechumenate model, I guess.
Right, exactly, right. And so, but what's happened is since Vatican II, and maybe even before then, I'm still studying some of this, is that we've actually drifted away from how we used to do some of it, right? And so the church documents telling us we need to move back to RCIA model is actually going back to how we did things in the first, second, and third century.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah. So what needs to stay the same is partly, and I can't believe
It's stuff that we already changed beforehand.
That we already changed that we need to go back to, right?
Yeah.
So, but what is it that stays the same? And I think a lot of people in youth ministry really understand this. The sense of community is tremendous in this, right? We can't lose that, right? It takes a village. This whole concept that it takes a village to raise up a Catholic in the faith, it absolutely does, right? So how are we, as we in secular culture become more isolated, how does the church fight against that isolationism and build community, right? That is at the root of who we are as a church. We need to come back to that or continue to do that. I think that's huge. And how we build community, and not just within age groups, which I think we're really good at doing. Like, we got all the high school kids together and the middle school and the children, but how do we cross-pollinate? I'm not saying we need to do a whole community catechesis or anything like that, although that could be a good strategy.
We might need to.
Maybe, but like, look, okay, I'm a parent of 3 young kids. I'm very intentional about building the tribe, what my wife and I call the tribe around us, to support me and my wife in raising my kids in the faith, because at some point my 10-year-old is not going to want to talk to me about anything.
Yeah.
I know that time is coming. If I literally put like in front of them, place adults in their lives who care just as much about them as I do, and I know how they think and act, that even though that my 10-year-old, who will be 15 in no time, won't talk to me anymore, but she will talk to them. And guess what? Some of the names we have called some of those individuals in our sacramental preparation program, we've called them like things like godparents and sponsors. And we need to widen that. It shouldn't just be a set of sponsors or godparents. It should be wider, right? But it needs to be this community, right? Belonging leads to believing, right? Research said that 2004. Growing an Engaged Church says belonging leads to believing. We come to faith because of the community that we are brought up into, not because we're taught all this stuff.
Yeah,
we're taught all this stuff in combination of the community, and that's the rub. I feel like we are teaching more than we are building community. And we need to do both. Okay. It's not either or, it's both. And I think we've lost some of that community aspect.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I would argue that if we did fully restored order, that whether as infant or at the age of reason, 7 or 8, we just did all 3 sacraments of initiation, like we used to do on the Easter Vigil for anybody that was entering the church, then my job as a youth minister would be so much easier if I just got to do youth ministry, do events, do community building, faith building, and didn't have to worry about, hey, make sure you get your saint report in by next Friday. It's due then. Pick a saint that you like. Like, hey, where's your sponsor format? Have you done your community service hours? Like, if it was just the youth ministry part, my job would be so much easier. And then the teaching and learning part would just come naturally from it. The message would still be there. It would all be the same, but without the thought of, oh, I have to do this. And because then I'll get my quinceañera, or like I'll get a car, or just, oh, so then I can get married in the church in 10 years. And my mom cares about that. Or just, I'm here so my mom shuts up, which was me my first year in it all, to be completely honest. And that way the faith isn't just seen as like homework or this dirgy thing you have to attend. It's just community building. I think that's a really good point.
Yeah. But we got to get to the point where they want it, right? Right now, the way that we've set up our requirements and things like that, I feel like we just force people, to do all the stuff that you rattled off, right? All these requirements, right? And we've got to move past that, and how does me as a 41-year-old guy get excited about reading a 600-page book on the sacraments of initiation. Now, I'm not expecting a 16-year-old to do that.
No, they've never.
No, never, right? Most of us listening probably wouldn't do that, right? But it was a journey, right? It was a journey that's been 30 years, really 40, if we're honest, 41 years in the making, that have been involvement in church, how my parents raised me, my friends who are all Christians, and we all kind of support each other in the faith, right? To my vocation in ministry, right? All of that builds on itself. None of them are isolated, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think our real challenge today, Scott, is people haven't been to church in 10, 11, 12 months, right? Because a lot of us haven't gone back yet because of the restrictions. Your restrictions in California are worse than where I am in Nevada right now.
Yeah,
right?
and then my wife and I, even though there's 2 outdoor masses at the church I work at, we don't attend those just out of an abundance of caution. And with my wife being pregnant, we're just not gonna risk that. Like, and then, but we watch online. We don't always watch our parishes. We have fun, church hopping literally around the world. If you haven't done that yet, do it. Father Rob Galley is great. And if you're ever in a rush, Archdiocese of Denver, 28 minutes.
Nice. That's good.
That's our, oh no, we're going to be late to receive communion because my parish passes it out at 10. We're like, Denver. But like, we still attend that way. But yeah, we haven't been in person. And my wife and I have looked at each other so many masses. It's been like, I miss being in the church. It's different when all you're seeing is, okay, here's like the establishing shot of the cathedral you're in or the church or wherever it is. And then the next thing, all you see is this box that I'm in, them at, not the podium, the lectern, at the lectern, the priest just behind the altar. And you think, well, that's all you're looking at anyway, but you're also just surrounded by it all and literally the community. And gosh, do I miss it. And you're right. Not everybody is like you who has the ability to go there in Nevada, or like me where I don't necessarily have the ability, but I still attend online. There's a lot of people who forget or realize, hey, I don't have to anymore. Mm-hmm. And these are the people in our classes.
Yeah, they're not even trying. And I get it. There's very good reason why people are not trying. But if people were only going out of habit, well, they're not coming back. Right. And so we've got to address that, right? When COVID ends and all the dispensations are gone, folks, our numbers are not going to be the same. There's no data to suggest the number is going to be the same. Almost every parish I know that I've talked to across the country, when they started to reinstate Mass, couldn't even meet the maximum number under the COVID restrictions, right? So they still weren't filling the church, even though it was less. And
well, I would argue too that some of that has to be for people like my wife and I, just an overabundance of caution as well.
Yes, but not everybody. I guarantee you.
Oh no, not everybody. But I'm sure there are people that want to be there but don't feel it.
There are a lot of people that aren't scared of COVID,
but if you have a parish of say even like 5,000 families and you can even fill up a quarter of the parish.
Yeah,
that's
yeah. So we have some work to do, right? And so to go back to your question, what do we hold on to? Well, the community, right? The focus on the RCIA model in all of our formation, whether it's sacramental prep or not, right? But I think the real challenge for us, Scott, moving forward, not just for youth ministers, but for pastors, for adult faith formation, for faith formation directors, how do we re-engage folks who have been disengaged for 10 plus months? And I have to say, I think we're going to be spending a lot of time on the phone, connecting with people, emailing folks, being out in the community, right? Pope Francis has been pushing us to do that. We can't just be a church that sits in the church building, right? We have to go out. We have to be missionary. And that's an element that we need to go back to. That's what we need to hold on to that we've lost, I think, over the last 50, 60 years.
Yeah, I saw a really good tweet just a couple days ago. To paraphrase it, this guy saying, "Do you remember how the apostles went out to all the different countries and had their 5 talks ready to go everywhere they went to tell the people all the time? No, me neither." Like they didn't have like a set of talks like you and I might have for a conference we will lead or a retreat. That's not how you do it. You go out and you preach the gospel. You tell the story. And that, like the quote falsely attributed to Patrick or St. Francis of Assisi, like preach the gospel at all times, use words if necessary.
Mhm.
I don't know who actually said it, but it's a very true quote. And that takes a lot of different forms in the modern world. You said emails, phone calls, just reaching out to people, also becoming social media literate. I don't care how old you are. If you're in this position right now, you have to learn how to use Instagram and make and make a graphic or an image that, you know, doesn't look like it's from 1993. Like
No
you
more
have to. I've
clip
just seen
art.
so
No
many
more
bad
clip
ones.
art.
I've seen like stop putting 5 images in one Instagram image and then put text over it. Stop doing that. Like I've just seen so many bad ones, but you have to, but at least they're trying.
Yeah.
But you have to learn how to use those things, because that's how you reach people. Make a Twitter account. You don't know how to use it yet. Well, figure it out. Follow people that do, you know, like, yeah, update your Facebook, but don't have that be your only way of communicating, especially like if, you know, you're a youth minister, kids aren't on Facebook.
Yeah.
You have to find a way to reach them. And in the same way too, the word mass comes from in the original Latin, ita missa est, to be sent out, to be missionaries. Like, you're absolutely right. That's what we're called to do. Go and be sent out like we used to do.
If COVID did anything for us, Scott, it required us to be uncomfortable. Those of us who are in parish ministry, right? That mission to be sent out is about being uncomfortable. And I'm challenging myself here as well, right? You know, I'm not preaching, you know, because I've got this all down. I really don't, right? It means to be uncomfortable and to go out and not expect everybody to come to us, because clearly that's not happening. We've lost the ability for people to come to us over the past 10, 11 months. That's not going to come back anytime soon. So how do we go out to them? And it's not just phone calls, emails, social media, but it also is that face-to-face interaction, right? Are we saying hi and meeting people in their home, or dropping off little goodie bags, you know, say, hey, we miss you. You know, here's a little whatever, you know, to say that we're thinking about you, and maybe some ideas of what they can do at home, right? Because that's one of the other realities. We have to empower parents to own this, and that's one of the challenges that we have in all ministry levels, you know. But we have to be uncomfortable. That's the lesson of COVID. COVID made us uncomfortable. I know a lot of us, myself included, want to go back to being comfortable like we were before COVID. But if we do that, we have squandered the opportunity that was called the pandemic.
Mm-hmm. It is only when you're uncomfortable that your comfort zone grows.
Oh, I love that. I haven't thought about that at all. That's a great image. I hadn't thought about that.
Hey, I finally got to teach you something.
Yes. Come on. You have taught me plenty, Scott. No worries there.
I hope not. I don't have much to teach.
Oh, please. You come on. Come on.
I do what I do. The Lord does the rest. Okay. So I wanted to ask more of a fun question before we got to the less fun stuff about the reality of the world we're in. But in regards to youth ministry, I was wondering, with you being a youth group kid, I'm assuming, and leading them for so long, how has youth ministry changed, or youth group changed, since you were in youth group?
Yeah, and this was hard for me to understand, that what hooked me when I was younger doesn't necessarily work today, right? And so I've had to put aside some of my experience as a youth, because that was a long time ago now, right?
I've had to learn to do that too.
Yeah, right. You know, and so I think we have falsely or unintentionally dumbed down the faith, right? But I think our young people, middle school kids to a point, but especially our high school students, they have deep, deep longing questions about life in general. And a lot of them have to do with faith. Like, does God exist, right? You know, is a very important question for every young person to ask, right? And so I'm all for the games and pizza and things like that. There's nothing wrong with that, right?
I'm all for pizza too.
Pepperoni. I just eat pepperoni, right? You know,
that's all.
Don't get crazy. Don't get crazy, right?
It's the cheapest topping.
Well, there you go. Well, I guess cheese would be cheaper, but you know.
Cheese isn't a topping. It's like a necessity to pizza.
Yeah. I don't like cheese pizza, but pepperoni, yeah. Okay. Anyways, what was I talking about, right? That if we don't go deeper, right? And not all at once, and I understand that not every young person is ready for that, okay? You know, I'm not saying that everybody's ready to go deeper, but if we don't provide opportunities for them to go deeper, then I think we're missing the opportunity. Look, we need to talk about sexual morality in the church. We need to talk about LGBTQ in the church, because we need to talk about systemic racism in the church. Why? Because these are hot topic secular issues that have a huge, that play a huge role in the church as well. We need to have conversations about this. And when I was growing up, we didn't talk about that stuff, right? We didn't talk about that stuff, right? And I didn't have those conversations at home either, right? So I think we need to be afraid to not go deep when young people are ready. Okay, not everybody's there, right? It is a phased approach, right? So I think that's one thing that's changed. I think we've watered it down, but I think we need to give our young people more credit. And the second thing that is parents. And I feel like I've been beating the drum forever and ever and ever on this, but we just don't do it, Scott. We don't know how to engage parents. We don't know how to empower parents to take more of a lead.
I'm gonna be honest, I have no idea how to talk to parents, because I'm still, well, I guess since I'm about to be a parent, I'm not that far away now, but I've always felt, I started at like 23 years old, and I'm like, all right, listen, I've got a 45-year-old mom yelling at me about her 16-year-old son, and I'm here like smack dab middle of their ages. Like I could even be her son. Like the ages are right. And I'm just like, how am I an adult like that? It was always my thought. Like, how do I relate to her?
Well, you can't. To be perfectly honest, you can't. Now, your life is going to change pretty dramatically here pretty shortly, and you're going to have oh man, your learning curve is going to be great.
We'll meet for another episode to talk about parenthood. How about that?
What have you learned in your first 3 months of being a dad?
We could do it after like my third day. Just be like, oh, baby crying on my shoulder.
Yeah, absolutely. But we need to engage parents. It's not enough to engage only young people and children. And I would argue that young people and children shouldn't even be our priority as church. And that's not John Rinaldo saying that. That's our church document saying that. Our hearts are burning within us. 1999 said that very clearly. Adults need to be at the center of our formation efforts. And then children and youth ministry are shoot-offs of that, right? Who are part of that. Name one parish, Scott, that you know of that adults are at the center.
like there's like an adult catechism class kind of thing.
That actually is, you spend more time, energy, and resources than you do on children's and youth ministry.
Well, no, because the money comes from the kids who have to pay for the classes to get confirmed, right?
Oh, there you go.
No, but you're right. There's none that I know of, at least.
Yeah, and look, most of our parishes are very child-centric. If you're going to have dynamic youth ministry, if you're going to have good children's ministry, I think what's changed, well, I'm going to argue that this has always been the case, but I think there's more urgency now. We have to engage the parents, right? Parents have to be at the center of this, right? We can't just let parents farm off their kids to us professionals and allow us to pass on the faith to them, because it doesn't work. And we have plenty of data to show it doesn't work. What's the greater impact? The parents are. That's not to say, Scott, as a youth minister, you're not going to have an influence. Of course you are, right? We all do. But parents need to be part of that. It needs to be a partnership. It needs to be a relationship, and not just like, here, take the kids and you make them Catholic because me as mom and dad can't do it.
Yeah. I would argue that, though, there is a bit of a, how do I say it? There's a divide on that ethnically. You know, like I grew up in an all-white parish, Southern Orange County. Real Housewives of Orange County was filmed like 2 blocks away from me, to be completely honest. I was not one of those people. I did not live in those houses, making that very well known. But like that's who I was surrounded by. And so my parish had money. We had like 200 kids going to youth group, but it was just like the 12 of us leaders that actually like cared. And so, well, that works for like us 12 kids and like talk to 12 sets of parents really, and like other things like that. But I know just from my wife working in Salinas, which is very heavily Hispanic, is that what she has been told over and over by these parents themselves, where she's like, I want you to do this, like, work with them. Studies show that like the more you read with your kids, the better readers they'll be. Help them with their homework. It's just, it's 2nd grade, it's 4th grade is what she's taught. And it's like, it's just simple math. Like you don't have to know algebra to help them. And they have said to her like, no, you're the teacher. We trust you. And she's like, no, like you need to work with them too. But their reaction to her is no, like we trust you because you're the teacher.
Yeah.
And that works too at the parish level. I have a lot of Hispanic families. I'm probably 75%, if I'm being conservative, Hispanic. And there are, one, a lot of them that don't speak English, so it's hard to even connect with them that way. And two, maybe there is that same idea, which I never thought of, because I've seen it with the white families where it's just like, you do this because you get it done, go, like they're your teacher, but not with the sense of, oh, well, I don't know anything and you do, so we just trust you to do it all.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Right. And we have this tendency, and we do this in lots of aspects of our lives, right? Teaching and, sports, right? Farm it all out to people. And it's almost like let other people raise our kids. And I'm being extreme. I'm being facetious. I'm not saying that, right?
You're just venting as a father of three. Right
well,
now.
I'm venting as well. But I would say that we've got to train our parents, and we got to give them confidence. That's what they lack, because their faith formation level is probably what they got when they were a teenager, when they did confirmation, or maybe it was first Eucharist, right? And so
that's
they
the last
don't know
church class they've had.
Right. But it's not about, see, this is the confidence. It's not about what you know. Mm-hmm. It's about who you know, right? God, right? It's about your relationship, assuming there is a relationship there, right?
Yeah.
And why is church important to you, right? I always start with story, Scott, right? Yeah. What's your story, right? Where have you experienced God in your life? Why are the sacraments? Why do you go to Mass, right? That's all you need to know right now, Mom and Dad. Really, that's it. And I want you to share those stories with your kids. I think we need to give people, parents in particular, simple ideas that they can take home, right? I think we get too complicated, right? Know all this, teach whatever, the 10 Commandments, or talk about the 7 gifts of the Holy Spirit. No, look, those aren't bad things, but we got to simplify it. Scott, I didn't mention this before, but I'm actually literally in the process of writing a very short book by a Catholic parent for parents. How do you pass on your Catholic faith to your kids? That's
a good book to write. Going to be completely honest.
Yeah, that's I'm working on that right now. And because look, I've got theology degrees. I've been doing this for a long time, and I'm still trying to figure out how to do it with my own kids, right? So I don't have all my crap together.
I will happily accept the free copy you're offering.
Well, there you go, right? Yeah. but that's what I want. Like the reason I'm writing that book is I want to give parents a cheat sheet of little things that they can do that I think go a long way, and things that I'm trying at home with my own kids, or things that I've learned from other parents, right? Little things that fit into the routine of our life already. That's what I'm working on right now, trying to make it short and brief. And that way every parish can buy them for their parents to say, hey, read this, use it, see what tips work for you, and just try some of the stuff at home. And I tell you, I guarantee you it's not complicated, because this guy right here is not a very complicated person.
I won't comment on that. No, there's a that reminded me. There's this who is not sponsoring us, but I'll still shout them out. I don't think we have a single sponsor yet. So if you want to, we're open. But it's like Catholic Family Box. Samuel, if you're listening, if you want to look that up really quickly. And I've seen it, and it's for when the kids get to at least like 3 or 4, like preschool age. But they have stuff like coloring pages, stuff for like, they send it like monthly, and it'll have like feast day stuff for you. It's a subscription based thing like everything else. And I thought it was a really good idea. And I found out one of my families uses it.
Oh, wow.
That's kind of how I found out about it. And I was and of course she's the one that I see her parents every day at Mass, and, and all this other stuff. And I'm like, yeah, your mom would. Her mom was also the only mom ever at the parents meeting in August before you start the year, who she raised her hand. I'm like, yeah, question. She's like, what curriculum do you use? Like, which program of confirmation do you use? And I was like, no one's ever asked me that. Let me double check.
I think that's so good. And actually my friend Chris Wesley, who runs Marathon Youth Ministry, he started doing a subscription model for teens as well. And so, folks, those of you who are in youth ministry may want to check that out as well. It could be a really good resource for folks. But yeah, and it's little simple things that people get at home, so they can do some things at home and not, again, just depend on showing up in Mass or youth night or confirmation or whatnot.
Yeah, it's called the Catholic Family Crate, for anybody wondering. I think they're great, and I'll be subscribing to it, I'm sure, in 4 years. Yeah. Okay. So let's gear back to youth ministers. But for any parents listening, you're welcome. You got some amazing advice from a father. Um, but okay, for youth ministers, I'm not gonna lie. I've been feeling this way. I know I'm not the only one. I know our director at the diocese has felt this way. I know other people working there have felt this way. Burnout. There is a real burnout that has happened to me this year too, where like I have my group of peer ministers, and they are, my helpers that are already confirmed in high school, and even young adult leaders with them, who just graduated in college. And luckily a bunch of them got to stick around because, well, they didn't go away to college this year. And I was like, oh, great. But slowly I've seen some like not come around as much, or some of the drop out. And I understand. There's not this community building I get to do anymore with them. I don't get to see anybody in person. I don't get to, show off as much my fun, wacky side. How all my game ideas are physical in person, knock each other around a little bit, stomp on balloons or make a pie, or something like, and instead I'm here 24 hours a day almost. I get stuck behind a screen of Twitter and Reddit threads, and when I should be doing work, like we talked about at the very beginning. But there is just this, like, what am I doing? Are they getting anything out of it? How do we respond, especially in youth ministry, to this burnout that is very real and very present in the church right now?
Yeah, I think it's twofold, right? I think everybody's burned out because this has been an extraordinary time of change. And those of us in ministry really have spent so much more energy trying to get creative, trying to think differently because we got knocked out of our routines, as we talked about earlier, that does take a toll. And you can only do that for so long. And we're almost on a year, right, of been doing this,
which
right?
I can't believe.
Oh my gosh, yeah. And we're all tired. Look, I have yelled more at my kids in the past 10 months than I probably have previously, right? And so we're all feeling the strain. I'm not an expert or perfect at this by any means at all, but the first thing I always have to do is like I have to give myself a break. Meaning, don't be so hard on myself, right? I've had to realize this has been tough. My behavior hasn't been good necessarily, but I need to allow myself to say, look, it's okay. You've been through a lot. And I've also apologized a lot to my kids in particular, so that they know. And that's an important thing that I want to do, is that when I'm wrong, I want my kids to know that I'm wrong. And so I apologize to them. But for me, well, and the other thing is, none of us have been able to take any vacations, for instance, right? And that's the other thing. We usually take a vacation in summer, we take some time off Christmas or whatever it may be, right? None of us have been able to do that. And if you had something booked like I did, it was all canceled, and you're trying to figure out refunds and credits.
I had like, oh man, I was supposed to have a crazy March. So I led my confirmation retreat for my kids the like second to last week of February, like February 22nd. Because I wanted to do it on a leap year day, but of course that date was taken. And then I got called to do another retreat for a church that I've done in the past, and another church that I've done, and then I had like 2 new ones. So I was gonna have like 5 retreats in 6 weeks. And my wife and I were like, oh man, like that's busy, while still doing my youth group every weekend and going to school and working. And I got to do one of those. I did my retreat, and then the next one, like March 7th. And then I was getting texts and emails like, oh, we might have to push it back. I'm like, yeah, that's fine. Like I'm free, and then all of a sudden everybody stopped talking to me. Like every retreat got canceled, just all of a sudden. So many things were planned at that level.
Yeah. Everything was canceled. And so I think, look, you may not be able to take a vacation yet right now, but look, you got to take days off. I know ministers who are still working 6-7 days in a row for whatever reason. Like, look, you've got to be hardcore about your days off, whatever the days off, like 5 days, man. You can't do more than that, right? You've got to take that time off. And I know this sounds so basic, Scott, but I tell you, this has changed my life. I know I need at least 7 hours of sleep. I'm getting 7 hours of sleep. I'm being very intentional about trying to get 7 hours of sleep, right? And make sure my kids get more, right? It sounds so simple and so basic, but my energy level is so much better because of that. And so those aren't comprehensive solutions to the burnout, but I think there are simple things that we could do today, right? That
Yeah.
kind of get us back in this space. And quite honestly, I need to pray more. I don't know about you, Scott, but whenever I
Don't say that.
really,
Don't say that.
no,
Because I need
whenever,
to.
oh yeah, whenever I sit down, even for 5 minutes, right? I'm not talking like, you don't need to do 60 minutes. If you can, that's awesome. Do it, right? But 5 minutes, I can't tell you how much 5 minutes makes a difference in my life. I have a confession here, Scott. I have a hot tub here in my house, and I love my hot tub. And the jets turn
Is it
on
the best place to pray?
yes. The jets turn on for 15 minutes, right? And then they turn off after 15 minutes, and that's like my timer. And I use that. It's great. I use those 15 minutes, especially in the evening after I put the kids to bed, right?
Mm-hmm.
And just focus my thoughts, whether it's prayer, whether it's meditation, whether it's just thinking things through. I've gotten some incredible creative ideas in the hot tub as well, right? Like, look, it doesn't have to be a hot tub, but what are those
Sounds like you're telling me to buy a
moments?
hot tub.
But go right ahead. But I'm not sure your wife would approve of me giving you that advice.
I just don't know where I'd put it in my 2-bedroom apartment.
Yeah. So we got to find those moments, right? Even if it's 5 minutes. And I know that's hard, and it's been harder lately, especially if you've got kids at home, you're doing the homeschooling, you're working, you're on a screen all day. Like, we got to detach from the screen, and find that time. So I know that sounds super basic, but for me, that's what I've been doing, and I'm better. I'm not finished, right? I feel like this is like a confessions, like an AA type of meet or something like that, right? Where like, I'm working on it. Here's what I'm working on. It's slow progress, right? But it is. But that's life. We're not done.
Mm-hmm.
We're not done growing and learning until we're dead, right?
Like my mom likes to say, you just have 5 more minutes in the oven. Mm-hmm. That was always her response. And people are asking about like me with school or a job. And, I was like senior year or just, I was still looking for a job. My mom's response, like I would get down. She'd be like, it's okay. You're just like a batch of cookies. You just need 5 more minutes in the oven and you'll be done soon. And like,
well, my cookies only take 6 minutes. So that means you've only been in the oven for 1 minute.
Cookies you make only take 6 minutes.
Yeah, but I have this weird, really hot electric oven. So I've learned to cook a little bit less than I did in previous ovens.
Can we trade electric ovens? Because mine takes like 30 minutes to preheat to like 375.
No, it's taken me a year to like really figure out my oven. Because truly, look, I'm not a baker connoisseur or anything like that, right? But every oven is different. You need to learn how to work your oven so that you get the maximum, value out of your ovens.
It's like when I watched the Great British Bake Off and like their whole bake is ruined in the tent. They're like, oh, everything just gets ruined in the tent. Like at home, it didn't do this. And I'm like, you have a different oven.
Yeah, that's right. Absolutely. I agree with that.
This is like a really cool state-of-the-art oven. You've got some like something built in 1825. It's England. Who knows?
So this is the part of the show where we now transition to cooking and baking.
There we go. Yeah. If you listen, I'm going to be honest though, with Burnout, you should watch the Great British Bake Off, first of all, to relax. But second of all, I actually fall prey to this all the time because when it first started out, I'm here on my home computer. I have 2 awesome monitors. I game on this thing. I built it to game for fun. Like I relax with video games. I'm not a reader. If I read, it's like manga. Like it's got to have pictures. And so then all of a sudden I'm working where I'm usually playing from, literally like doing my playing and relaxation from on the machine I built for that purpose. And now all of a sudden I have to do everything from this little square of a room. And that was so hard for me because it just mixed everything. If you relax at the beach, but all of a sudden you bring your laptop to the beach every time you go, the beach isn't relaxing anymore. No paradise is. And it's been hard. I get mad at my work. I get upset like, oh, this kid isn't doing this and oh, this parent doesn't understand. And in my job, working for the church, about the church, teaching kids about the church, I don't think to pray. I just get mad. And it's so hard, but there is hope because I finally getting back into the Rosary. But the sad thing is it's been so long. Just yesterday, I was like, I need the Rosary. Like, oh my gosh, I need this. And so I was in here and my wife is teaching from home in the living room. And I'm praying the Rosary. I'm like the 3rd decade, like literally halfway through. It's like 12:30. My wife walks in because it's lunchtime. We usually eat lunch. And she opens like, am I interrupting? And I'm like, yeah, kind of. She was like, I'm sorry. Like it'd been so long since she's seen me pray the rosary, she didn't know what to do. And that's a problem. But the good thing is I prayed a rosary. It's the same thing I tell my kids. There's a challenge of the week at the end of every lesson. And I'm like, let's go over it. I tell them, hey, like if you did all three of the challenges, that's great. If you did one challenge, that's also great. If you did none of them, well, that's also great because you have another opportunity this week to do a challenge of the week. And I have to tell myself the same thing. Like you said, I have to give myself a break, not be so hard and be like, hey, I prayed a rosary at least.
Yeah. Yeah. Or even if you only got through half, that would have been okay too, right?
Yeah. Well, I was like in the zone. I was like, I have ADHD. I'm like, I got to finish what I started.
There you go.
Can't just let that
love
go.
It. Love it. Love it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you, John, so much. I'm out of questions and things to talk about. Going to be completely honest there. We've been very honest this past 45 minutes, hour or so. But I think we needed that. I think people listening are looking for that and need that in these moments, even though we've been getting that for a year. This isn't over yet. This is over probably, gosh, if I'm going to be conservative, 9 more months. I don't know. Maybe we're back at school in September if we're all vaccinated. Yeah. I just saw a plan and like 50% of us should be vaccinated by the 4th of July.
Well, there you go.
Saw that on somebody's Twitter, who is a doctor. So,
a doctor of what?
He's a doctor and that's what matters. Okay.
Yeah, that's right.
Twitter doctor. But yeah, so, that's the hope. So this isn't going anywhere and we have to remember that and get comfortable in being uncomfortable here.
Yeah, absolutely. If I could, Scott, as we wrap up, this conversation about what the future of ministry looks like, I think is a relevant conversation. So at Santa Clara University, where I teach, we are doing a webinar on March 2nd. It's a free webinar on March 2nd at 6:30 p.m. Pacific. And we're going to talk about that. I'm moderating this event with 3 guests who are our panelists. And we're going to talk about the future of specifically youth and young adult ministry in the 21st century post-COVID. And so if you want to come and listen to some other voices besides me, I'm going to be asking all the questions, so I'm not going to be talking a whole lot. So that you may come just for that, right? So
I finally get to do that.
Yeah, there you go. So come check that out if you want to engage in this conversation more. I would love it. Again, it's sponsored by Santa Clara University. If you just go to santaclarauniversity.edu and you'll find the information at the graduate program for pastoral ministry. Would love for you to join us. It'll be a fun conversation. So I leave that, Scott, for you and your listeners, and maybe some of them can join us that evening.
Yeah, I hope so. I'll definitely be there. That's a great thing to be a part of. So please, I invite everybody, whether you work for the church or not, whoever's listening here, any young adults, parents, DREs, priests, please attend that to talk about this. This is a reality. Whether you are directly a part of it or not, people that are your own children are a part of this. They are youth and young adults. There's a lot of us young adults out there, and we all need help. All right. So thank you, John, so much for joining us today. It's been great. I miss talking to you every week in class. It was definitely fun, but hopefully I get to take another one of your classes soon.
Well, I'm teaching again in the spring, so come join us, Scott.
Hey.
Thank you for this opportunity. This was a fun conversation. I appreciate you inviting me, and hopefully people listening got some good stuff. But again, I just appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, of course. Oh, and if you want to, John also has his own podcast where you can hear more of him if you liked what he had to say. What's it called? It's the Church Podcast, right?
The churchpodcast.org. Just go check it out there.
Yeah. So that one's easy to remember. All right. But thank you, everybody, for joining us today to talk about this real subject of youth ministry in this COVID world. And we'll see you in the next episode. So thank you all for watching.